Good morning. This is Kathy for Getting Chatty with Kathy, and I want to thank you for joining us today. We have a very interesting person on the show today that I'm excited to talk about. I think we're all going to learn about what's going on in the city that some of us might have not really had a full grasp of, and I know it's going to be a tough conversation, but I think that these are from my perspective is just to help and to just share the information so that change doesn't happen if we don't know about it. So anyways, I have Sargent Casey Ward. He's from the Regina Police Services, and I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of months ago when I was emceeing an event regarding human trafficking. And you were able to come and just kind of talk to the group of people about what your role with the Regina Police Services is in regards to that. Just to take it back one step, I love that you're here helping support our city in the role that you do. And I know that people that are in police services, it's usually because they're passionate about it. So before we get into human trafficking, because it is something that I really do want us to talk about, I just hope that we can take a step back, though, and just kind of get a sense of who you are and why you're doing that.
For sure. Actually, I was born and raised in Regina.
Woohoo!
Love the city. Actually, I was working as an insurance underwriter with my dad's business, and at one point was actually looking probably to take the business over. And I had a good friend of mine that had just gone to the police service, and he came up to me one day and said, "You know what? You should become a police officer. It's one of the best jobs in the world. You get to carry a gun, drive fast, and a lot of time you go around the community and meet a lot of people." And I started really thinking about what I want to do in my future. And, growing up, I was in a lot of sports, really active, and I couldn't really see myself just every day sitting behind a desk. And the more I looked into it, the more I thought, this is actually a pretty exciting career. And I've always been a person that enjoys talking to different people. And throughout my 25 years, I've just met so many amazing people and would have never have changed it in a million years. Best career I ever could have picked.
So you've been doing police now for 25 years, you're telling me?
Yes.
Holy macaroni. So before that, you were working at an insurance company with your dad. What was the moment where you're like, oh, so your buddy said, let's do this? Or was it did it percolate anywhere else?
Actually, it's kind of funny because if you remember way back in the days, and I actually found it, we used to do aptitude tests. Mm-hmm. And going back later on when I'd moved out, I actually found that on my aptitude test it said policing or military. But it was kind of a career I never even thought about. And for one, I actually didn't have the confidence to think that I could be a police officer. But I just realized that I want to do something different in life, and I love dealing with people, and I just thought sitting behind a desk every day of my life wasn't something that I want to do, and really respected my father for it. My father and I are still best friends, but we're two totally different people, and it's funny because I was really worried about telling him, and when I went in the one day and said, "Dad, I'm thinking of applying to police," he said, "That's probably the best thing I've ever heard. This job isn't meant for you. It's would provide you a good lifestyle for you and your family, but I just see that you're not going to be happy for 35 years and, do what you want, do what you love." And the best advice I ever probably got from him was, he said, you work pretty well half your life. And if you hate your job, life isn't that much fun. If you love your job, you actually kind of have life figured out. And he said, chase your dreams. And my parents encouraged me to do it. And, I come from no policing background in our family or anything like that. And it was just a couple of people I knew and went down to human resources. And the minute I started asking questions, I just fell in love with the thought of being a police officer.
So you go down there how do I apply to be a police officer? And then what happened?
Well, it's actually funny. Usually it takes a few years, and what happened is they end up having a position at the police college show up. So they kind of rushed me through the process. And
so it was meant to be. You opened the door and it let you in immediately? Is that what I just heard?
No, actually, it's even kind of funnier. I didn't get in. And but then I realized I wanted even more. And, at that time, it was really, really hard to get into the police service. There's 400 or 500 people, and actually, I think I just bugged HR so much that they finally let me in. I would go down there every week. I took any course I could, and I'd come down and bring them a certificate. And I remember the people working in HR. I'd walk in, they're like, "Oh, here he is again." And I think I just showed them that this is something that I really want to do, and it was actually kind of the first time in life that I really there's something that I really wanted that bad that I knew I'd do anything to get that job. And then a year later, I was quite young when I originally applied. I was about 21. One of the reasons I probably didn't get in, and just, kept on, and then got hired around 23 years old.
Good job. Wow, I love that. So you're passionate about it and you knew it right from when you applied. So you've been there for 25 years, and so how does a police officer start? Like, do you do like a beat cop, like just drive around kind of thing at first, or how does it work?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. Actually, I started as a special constable in cells. So there's some people that get hired and go straight to police college. I actually worked 8 months under detention, which gave me a great background on what policing is. Got to meet a lot of the great people. Went to police college, and then we all start off in patrol. So out on the beat, out in the community, in uniform, driving in a police car. So that's where you start, and
you get to meet the community essentially, and various areas. I'm sure have different vibes and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the best part. In that patrol aspect, you never know what your day is going to be like. And I still remember in my first week, Sunday, and usually Sundays are quiet. We just went for breakfast and, got called to a 911 call where someone just wanted to leave the house. And next thing you know, we were actually at a major murder investigation. So, quiet Sunday morning, just wanted to get a coffee and some toast. And next thing you know, we're in a multi-murder investigation. So, patrol is pretty neat that way because you never know what's going to happen. And it's really the backbone of policing, and probably one of the most exciting jobs you'll have.
Exciting. I don't know. I think that sounds intense. But any case, so you've done that, and how long did you stay on the beat for?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny because I was on for about 3 years, and then back then, if you remember, we had problems with stolen cars.
Okay.
The Oldsmobile gang. So
Gosh, yes.
way back, I know I'm dating myself. So I actually got seconded to a special project dealing with stolen cars for about 6 months.
Stereos. I remember stereos.
Yes,
too.
yeah.
Ugh.
Absolutely, and then went back to patrol, but then they were having an issue with the Native Syndicate in the city, so I actually got seconded the next year to a project to gang enforcement on the Native Syndicate. Did that for about 8 months, and then got seconded to, if you remember, Tamara Keepness, the missing 5-year-old
Still
child.
not solved.
Right, so I worked on that task force for about a year and a half, and then went back to patrol, and then went into plainclothes for about 4 years.
Okay, you really went quickly over all of this. So I want to talk a little bit about each one. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you said you are on the beat for a few years. How did the city leave an impression on you then compared to now?
Yeah, I was lucky. I worked in our North Central area, and actually I was trained by our retired deputy, Dean Ray, and an amazing police officer named Derek Stevely. And, it was an eye-opener for me. I lived in this city, but those two trainers and another trainer, Scott Lehman, who was one of our senior guys on our SWAT team, I was so lucky to get with those people because Scott taught me how to do quality investigations and how to be safe and tactically sound. And Derek and Dean were so involved in the community, and they knew every single person walking down the street. So we wouldn't drive 5 feet without stopping to talk to someone, and they really got to know the community, and especially a lot of the working girls that back in the day. And when we talk later about human trafficking, but a lot of the sex trade was on the streets. And so we had stopped and talked to them. They knew their kids, they knew their family members. And, I just remember, about a year later, I wasn't working with them. I got a call at about 12 at night. I was working, and from Derek and Dean said, "Hey, I just need you to go buy a pack of diapers. This gal that was working on the street, her boyfriend's in jail. She has nothing. Can you grab some for me in diapers? Let's help her out. She's a great person." And it just really put a perspective on, you just treat everyone fairly. Everyone has a story out there. Some people, I really learned in my career, almost never had a chance from the start, but such amazing stories, and a lot of people that are, want to do good. They just need a little bit of help.
Right. And who are we to judge?
Absolutely.
So you do your beat thing. I'm sure that was super intense, eye-opening. So then you move into your task force. You get pulled into different ones. So is there anything you want to kind of shed some light on that affected you during that time frame?
Yeah, the stolen auto one was interesting because if you remember back then, it was a lot different than it is now because it was 12, 13-year-old kids stealing cars and driving them 200 kilometers an hour. It was so
Holy
dangerous out there.
macaroni.
And even when we're on patrol, like, you would drive at night and you'd come up to an intersection on a green light and you would stop. And because there were so many stolen cars, and if you think, even an adult that's driven a car for, 5 or 10 years, but we're talking, 12, 13-year-old kids driving cars at 200 kilometers an hour. So it was so
dangerous.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and it was scary out there. There was times there was more stolen cars out there than there were police cars.
So what do you guys do? You obviously, once you've found a kid to be doing that, there's Dojacks, and is that what we did back then? Was it I'm not sure what would have happened.
Yeah, there's a couple things we did. I think one of the things we did is obviously we, would catch the people that sold the cars, hold them accountable, but then also a lot of them would get out in the community, so we'd help monitor them. So, they'd be out on curfews or have to stay at a residence, and, we try to help get them programs to keep them from...
Busy.
Exactly.
So, was the motivation back then just joyriding and
Absolutely.
having fun? Okay, so it wasn't like now where you steal a car and you try to get it overseas or something crazy.
No.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, that's scary. Kids, man, now it's fentanyl that we worry about.
100%, yeah.
Oh, so scary. I'm so blessed that I grew up in the 80s and 90s where, the biggest problem was me making the bad decision where, my goodness. Okay, so I have to ask about Tamara Keepness.
Yeah.
Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
You were still young. You might have even, been, the age of the mom. How is that? That's scary. You have such a... for those of you that don't know the story, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but it was a little girl that was 6 that went missing?
Yeah, 5 years old, yeah.
5.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. From a mother who was she in human trafficking as well, or?
No, but she did live a high-risk lifestyle.
Okay, I remember that. And then for years we were looking for her.
Yeah, and it's still an ongoing investigation. We still have officers dedicated to that file, and we can't really, get too much into it because it is an ongoing. But, it's one of those files where you work at for a year and a half, and you get, I wouldn't say nowhere, but you in our job, usually you work hard, you do it, and you find out what happened. And, that was such a tough file because I remember when the chief at the time, Chief Cal Johnson, came in and said, okay, the task force is done and stuff. It was such a...
Heartbreaking.
Yeah, because, you wanted to solve, you want to find out what happened. And, there's a lot of theories out there, but no one truly does know what happened that night. And, for closure, for everyone, it'd be nice to know what did happen.
Yeah. Oh, terrible story. All right, so then you walk away from that, and you just have to, clean your hands and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
That's intense. Do you compartmentalize things?
It is tough, and we actually sit on some mental health committees across Canada, and I think that's a big thing within our community now is really understanding, because back then we never really dealt with those issues.
Right.
You just kind of try to forget about them and move on. Where now I think we do a lot better of talking about those things and how to deal with those, because it was you'd go home every night going, how do we solve this, and all of a sudden it's done. You walk away, and the good thing about our job is that we actually get to usually move on to something great afterwards too, right? But still to this day, I think back to the investigation, what else could we have done? Is there anything else? And we still get tips on it here and there and stuff like that. And so the investigators will come ask, hey, we got this tip, would this make sense? And you kind of get excited again, hoping that maybe somewhere along the line you'd figure out what happened.
Yeah, I gotta say, your guys' jobs must impact you. Wow. I have a friend that's a police officer, and he was telling me about a situation that happened that was pretty intense, and I loved that he said, but afterwards, they got us all together in a group that was affected by it, and we all talked about it.
Yeah.
That's huge, and I'm sure back then that was never done.
No, it is different, and I'd say Regina Police Service probably is one of the leading services in Canada when it does come to mental health. They actually, I'm on a committee, CIPS, or Canadian Institute for Public Safety Research and Treatment, that's based out of the U of R, that has a leading researchers in the world on post-traumatic stress disorder, occupational stress injuries, and we've done a lot of stuff with them. But yeah, we we have a chief, we have, 2 full-time psychologists, a full-time physiotherapist. We do a lot of good things, and what you're talking about is a critical incident debriefing. So you're right, before we would go to, a bad call and just keep on going to the next call. So now we're looking at ways for, our officers to sit down and talk about what happened. And one of the biggest things is just reducing that stigma. It's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
And, our service has done a lot of work with that, over the last few years and stuff like that. And, it's okay to go to a call and, not really feel great afterwards, because we deal with a lot of
Heavy
absolutely
things.
yeah.
Okay, speaking of heavy, let's go into human trafficking.
Yeah.
So I'm really lucky. Like, I have my own job, so I can kind of work my own hours. And one of the things when I was an international recruiter, I really hated was I couldn't volunteer very well because I was always going to other countries at odd times, and it's hard to like commit to something if you're regularly gone.
Absolutely.
So now that I was planted in Regina full time, I was like, I gotta give back. My family I grew up with my parents doing that, and so when the opportunity to learn about human trafficking came up, I thought, oh my God, this is such a crazy topic. That can't be that big of a deal here, but like it could come here. That's kind of what I thought. And then I started, getting stuff ready for what we did was that fundraiser. And in that, we got to talk and watch documentaries about human trafficking. And I was like, man, like this is way deeper and bigger than I in a million years thought was going on. So this is what you live with and eat and breathe at work every day.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because you're right. We get a lot of people that come talk to us and want to know more about human trafficking and what does human trafficking even look like in our province? Because a lot of people see, the sound of freedom or Taken, and they think of human trafficking as that, you're walking down the street, you're thrown into a van, and next thing you know, you're being, trafficked. And fortunately, that doesn't happen around here. Our human trafficking looks a lot different. So we really trying to get that messaging out. What does human trafficking look like in the province of Saskatchewan?
Paint that picture.
Yeah, so it is, a lot different. And what we usually do see, and there's kind of 2 aspects of it, but one of them is we call it the Romeo scenario. So it's, traffickers that kind of prey on the weak, the vulnerable. So, we had one file, and where I just find it's a good example. A young lady was just walking into a weed shop just to, it's legal now, so that's fine. But, you could tell kind of came from the inner city. This guy showed up, nice car, lots of money. Starts talking, why don't we hang out together? This person had hardly any money at all. Hey, can I buy you some makeup? Do you want to hang out? Exactly. And this gal just fell in love with this guy. And next thing you know, it's like, hey, have you ever been to the mountains? And she's like, I've never even been out of Regina. And well, let's go on a trip. And next thing you know, she's outside of Calgary, and for a couple of weeks was put out until she could run away. So it's more that we call it the Romeo scenario, where people start to date and kind of they form that relationship. So because a lot of people think, oh, the person being trafficked absolutely hates the trafficker, but it's also one of the things that we struggle with sometimes when we're trying to prosecute people that we do end up charging, because they're still in love with that person. That person in a way treated them really good and gave them things they'd never have had.
How confusing.
Right. So it is. And one of the big things is a lot of times they prey on, runaways, people that are in the, social services programs, people that have no one else out there, so that, finally someone paid attention to them and bought them some things. So it's a really complex issue, especially within our province. And then you talk about, we also have a familial, where unfortunately there's family members that are turning out their own family members, and even we see it in the gangs as an initiation part of it. So it looks a lot different. Everyone always thinks it's this multi-millionaire person coming through with people in cages and stuff like that. No, half the time they're living together, go to sleep together at night, driving around together, but they're being turned out.
Okay, so how does your role, because I found when you talked to me in the past, I really liked how you yourself involve in the community and what you do. So why don't we get a sense for that?
Yeah, and I think this is one thing, you're totally right. It is a community issue. And one of the things we really try to do is educate the community because, we're usually not going to get, we used to call them victims. A lot of times we call them survivors now because they've survived a absolutely terrible thing. And the other thing is interesting. A lot of times I do refer to it as a female because most of our people that are trafficked are females, but we have had, males and in the transgender community too. But one of the things we want, we see is a lot of times is the survivor isn't the one coming forward. It's other people. So one of the things we really want to do is educate our community, and not just, the common people, but people that are in the industry that they might see it. So hotel staff, bar staff, the airports, cab drivers, all these different things, so that if they think they do see something, come forward and let us know. Just give us a starting point and we can, work on trying to, look at that investigation. And one of the things we learned early on in it is that in our police world, usually a conviction is, we want to get the person and get the conviction. We really realize now that it's really not that conviction. It's if we can get that person help out of, they always call it the game, get them out of that world and get them help. Well, that's phenomenal for us. If we can get a conviction, great. But you're right. We have to look at it a little bit different because we want that person safe and out of that lifestyle, and then hopefully hold that offender accountable also.
I was fortunate enough for somebody to share a story with me of her personal experience where, by the time she was 30, she had 6 kids.
Yeah.
And I could not imagine having that weight of that family on my shoulders while trying to get out of a business that probably is quite profitable. And she was this, to come and talk about something so, hard, oh my goodness. And then she said, my goal when I left was to have my kids all finish high school. That's how she was like, I'm going to change the world this way so that it doesn't happen again. And it's just oh my goodness, this is happening here. And so you educating the airport and you educating these areas of taxi drivers and hotel workers and all that is wonderful. So they tell you, and you're now there, but how do you connect the two?
Yeah, so different investigative methods. We do a lot of proactive stuff too. We actually, people that are being trafficked a lot of time are posing as escorts. So we monitor the escort, websites. We actually will meet the escorts. We don't phone them up and say, hey, it's the police, we want to meet you, because they never would. But we will meet them and talk to them. And all we're...
You don't arrest?
No, because that's actually legal to do. So going back... now, sorry, I should clarify that, but going back to around 2016, so it's actually legal to sell sex.
Okay.
It's illegal to purchase sex.
Okay.
And, some people have asked us, that seems kind of hypocritical, but one of the things when they looked at this nationally, and I actually got to work with Senator Denise Batters, who was this portfolio, but what they really learned is, and the example I gave you of when I was working on North Central, so you have, a lady out there on the stroll working to make $40 to provide food for their kids. So now we arrest her, we put her in jail, we take the kids away. That's not working. Or the person that's doing it for their addictions, right? So what they said is, okay, we want to make, and it's their choice, their body, their choice. So if you want to sell sex, you can. Now, the purchasing side of it, what they're really trying to do is, because there's always going to be
the John,
right, and the traffickers and underage, right, is the holding the people accountable. So we meet the escorts, and first thing we tell them is, what you're doing is legal. You're not in any trouble, but we'd like to talk to you. Do you have a safety plan? Is the money going to
get
yourself?
them out of the dangerous situation? You tell them the tools that are available?
100%. And we have we work with a lot of great community partners, Family Service Regina, the Sexual Assault Center, to name a few of them. And, we are able, if they need some help, addictions, we are able to help them and point them in the right direction if they want to. And because I always say is, a lot of them are making very, very good money, but you talk to them, they don't want to do it, and they're making that money for a reason. They're not making that money because they're flying all over the world on vacations. A lot of them are making that money because maybe they have a family and they don't have means to, support it, those sort of things. So, we help try giving them, different choices. And if they want to still continue to do that on their own free will, they're not being trafficked. They're allowed to do that. Obviously, it's legal.
I appreciate what you're doing. You're trying to make it safer for them, so that if they want to stay, they can. Here's some information, and if they don't want to stay, here's some ways so that you're removing barriers for them to get out of it.
100%. And we've actually, it's funny. We had a couple of files where we've charged. We charged one guy because he didn't really like her, punched her out, held a knife, and took the money. And when we're like, well, that's a robbery. And she's like, well, yeah, what are you going to do about it? We're like, well, we'll charge him. And we actually charged him. We found out who it was through, police investigation, and charged him. And she's surprised because, you're working that job. You don't deserve to be beat up, robbed, or, at the end of the day, you have the right to say no. So, we talk to them about those things. And one of the big things we try to make sure is, like, do you have a safety plan? Does someone know you're here? Because a lot of them will have a network where they'll even phone, one of their friends, say, hey, at date's coming in at 8, I'll be done at 9, phone, just to make sure that they're safe. And because it is a high-risk lifestyle.
Yes. Well, I hope that the city of Regina looks at these situations and is able to offer supports for those who want it. And I appreciate that you're educating people, so at least we're aware of what's going on, so that we can talk about it and see how else we can help people. Because honestly, the people of our community, we need to take care of each other.
Absolutely. And, I got to say that the city's done phenomenal. The provincial government, they funded 40 positions for the Saskatchewan trafficking response team. I think it's 34 RCMP, and then 2 in Regina, Saskatoon, and Prince Albert, because most of us had like a vice section, right, to give us additional resources. And really what they're looking at is provide resources to look at trafficking, whether it's human trafficking, firearm trafficking, or drug trafficking, especially between the reserves and the cities, because we are quite close to them. But just the provincial government and some of the programs that they're helping us and funding to come out with, and then even the city, I've spoken to city council a few times, and just the commitment to them to, they even funded a bylaw officer, a body rub establishment officer to help with the bylaws. So there has been that commitment to show that, hey, we do want to deal with this. And then just, we have such amazing community partners that, day in, day out, we're on the phone with our, we actually now have 24-hour access of sexual assault, that we call them SANE nurses. So nurses that are specially trained to deal with victims of sexual assault. We work with them too, because we want them to hopefully see signs of trafficking, right? And again, it seems like daily we get a phone call from them, and not just on human trafficking, but hey, we have this. So we have a great relationship with our community and with those resources, that when we come across someone, it's just not the police helping them, it's wrapping them around and helping them. Scotiabank actually has a lot of people that come out of trafficking have zero ID and zero bank account. So they help them get ID, and they basically give them $1,000 credit card, knowing that, it'll probably be racked up and they'll never see that money, but they're giving someone the opportunity.
A chance.
Exactly, to start again.
Well, you know what? Thank you, Scotiabank, and thank you, Casey, for coming today, and thank you to all of the supports that are in place. And I hope that we can continue to talk about this conversation, as I think that it's very important. Thank you so much for listening out there, and take care. Bye now.